did it in a leadership role, same thing. People will follow that guy all day long, but the guy that's all buttoned up and sounds perfect, and they don't really follow that.
Welcome to the Harry Handled It podcast. Today we've got the awesome J.M. Ryerson on, who is an entrepreneur, an international speaker, a coach, and the host of his own podcast, Let's Go Win. J.M., welcome.
Thanks, Harry. I appreciate you, brother, man. How you doing?
Excellent, man. Excellent. And I know we were having some conversation off the air about your background, about what I do and what we do here. So I'm excited to share that with our listeners. Can you give them a little bit of a history about J.M. Ryerson and what brought you to Let's Go Win?
Sure. Yeah, I really started my entrepreneurial career when I was about 25, and it was in the financial service world. I don't know anything about financial services, Harry. I'll just be the first to say it. But that wasn't what I was really expected to do, right? Like, I figured out early on, building teams, sales, leadership, that was really my lane. And so I really figured out that, man, I love building distribution. And so that's what I did around the country for 3 different companies in the IMO space. And I sold those 3 companies. And I wrote this book called Let's Go Win, Keys to Living Your Best Life for my 2 sons. My wife and I have a 19 and 16-year-old now, and never really planned on doing anything with it, Harry. That was for them. And the gal I was working with said, "Man, you're selfish." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Look, if you don't share this with more than just your sons, you're selfish." And I said, "You're right." Published a book, and then Let's Go Win really started developing. So now it's kind of iterated several times. And what I really do is I help business owners, for the most part, help them with their revenue and building their companies from sales, leadership, and culture standpoint. So every day, man, I get a chance to work with people on performance and living their best life. So I feel very blessed to find what I'm doing today. Let's Go Win is something I'm passionate about, and it seems to help a lot of companies and people live their best life, which always makes you feel good.
100%, man. You can feel the energy, when you're talking to somebody about what they're talking about and what they bring when they bring that topic forward. And I want to dive a little deeper in Let's Go Win. And what was the motivating philosophy behind, giving your sons and now the broader community some framework to live their life?
So if I look back at my career, I've always been really focused on performance, right? Again, I told you I didn't know anything about insurance and annuities and investments. That just didn't make me passionate. But what I cared about was helping people get as much of these things that they needed. And so performance was just something I'm just obsessed with. How can you perform at your very highest level? And what I thought about was, all right, my 2 sons, they're my everything. My wife and I, we were very proud of our kids. We want to give them everything. But if we get hit by a bus tomorrow, what guidebook do they have that maybe we could leave them with? That's where the whole thing started. And so I wanted to write just a very easy, if you hopped on a plane in New York and you landed in LA, you could finish the book and come away with, 3 big takeaways per chapter. And there's 12 total chapters. And so that's what I set out to do, is just really show them, like, here's some of the lessons I learned. So for instance, chapter 1 is on vulnerability. That is the most important lesson I learned as a leader, is truly being comfortable and being open to vulnerability. And then I end with transcendence and overcoming self-limiting beliefs. And there's chapters all in between. But the whole idea is I wanted them to have something where they can say, "Oh, this is where, mom or dad, this is their philosophy on it in case we weren't here." And it just happened to be that it's pretty applicable to most people's lives.
And performance is a big thing in our space. We're hired to represent people in their injuries and workplace injuries, all the types of injuries that there are. And when people turn to us, they expect the promise of performance back. And so there's an expectation that we're going to produce a result for somebody. And so that is also a big focus in all of our practices, is how can the team perform better? How are they performing today? How can we perform better for the clients and give them better results? So I'm curious, how did you choose to start vulnerability as the number one sort of focus in the book for performance leadership?
Yeah, it was an interesting chapter to start with because, again, I was raised in Montana. I was taught boys don't cry. So it's not like I was taught vulnerability. So we're clear. But what I learned is when I was able to really open up to my team, and this was about the second company about halfway through, I went through in my own life, my wife and I were separated for a year. And in large part, what happened is I wasn't truly being my authentic self. I wasn't being vulnerable. And so I was dragging this stuff home from work and dragging the home stuff to work. And it really came down to I wasn't being open about what was really happening. Well, that created a massive division with my wife and I. And so I really, I think we learned from painful experiences. And I thought, oh my gosh, the moment I actually opened up to her and told her these are the things that are going on, these are the things I need to work on, everything shifted. It shifted for the better. And guess what? When I did it in a leadership role, same thing. People will follow that guy all day long, but the guy that's all buttoned up and sounds perfect, and they don't really follow that. They may listen to it a short term, but when you really let somebody in and it's a reciprocal thing where you're open to hearing them and you realize that you're connecting with another human being, that's where the magic really starts to happen. And so I wanted my kids to know, like, it is okay to cry, as a man. It's okay. I'm not saying cry every day. That's not what I'm saying, but just being okay with, I'm not okay right now. And so I think that's why it was so important to me that they know this was what I was taught, guys. And you know what? It didn't lead to the fulfillment I wanted. The moment I let people into my life, it was amazing how business just took off.
That's wild. And part of what we do as trial lawyers is you have to be authentic and open about your cases, specifically in the context when you're trying a case in front of a jury. I mean, you can fool maybe one person for a few minutes or whatever, but when 12 people are looking at you every day for weeks on end, I mean, they sniff out whatever it is that they're going to sniff out. So being vulnerable, open, and yourself has been a major key in my journey through this trial lawyering, culture and craft. So I feel like that's also pretty applicable in this field. And I'm curious, as a business leader, I find times when I'm running with my team and we're holding a meeting about what to do or some new process that we're implementing. And I like to start those meetings off about a story of why this idea came to be. And most of the time is because I made a mistake and I realized that there is a way to fix that mistake on an ongoing basis. And so we start off our meetings on kind of that note. Can you tell us more about what it means to be vulnerable in the context of performance leadership and being a leader in a business?
Yeah, and I like what you said because you probably learned that. And I'll answer your question, but you probably didn't get taught in law school like, "Hey, you should really be open." And it's like that's probably not in the curriculum wherever you went to law school. And by the way, same in business, right? We weren't taught. You're actually taught the opposite, that you need to know all the answers and put on this front. And the truth is, we're human beings that are fallible, and as you said, we make mistakes. That's a part of it. So for me, what I really found is when I connected with my team, when I would say, look guys, here's what's going on. I got a sick kid at home. I have a mom that I need to fly back to Montana to take care of. I have these things going on. People can now relate to you because you're human now. You're not just some robot that wakes up every day and it's perfect. I mean, that's just not the way it's going to be. And the more that, here's what I've also found with people that came to work. Nobody wants to show up and do a bad job. It doesn't mean that they haven't, right? There's some days where literally somebody comes and you're like, you are not on your A game, but more than likely there's something else going on at home. And I just want to know so I can say, hey, maybe you should go home and just take care of that. When you're ready to come back, let's do that. Or how can I best support you in this role? And when you do that, it's amazing where people are like, oh my gosh, Harry really cared about me, as even though he's my boss, he actually cares about me as a person, not just me being this attorney. And so that's how it always, when I really, really started to let people in, I was like, oh my gosh, the more I genuinely care about someone, the more they want to perform for the company, for the team. And there's one saying that has always struck with me is like, people will forget what you said or did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I can see how that might be applicable in your world. Like the jurors, I imagine they may not remember exactly what you said, but if you move them emotionally, they're like, oh my gosh, Harry did this. Remember when he talked about this and I felt that. That's when people really get behind you. And so that would be the overall idea, is just remember, when you make people feel a certain way, they will remember that, but they won't remember exactly what you said.
It's funny how the more people I talk to, the more I realize some of these principles, just life principles, apply fundamentally across across the board. So not only does it apply to good business leadership, it applies to good trial lawyering, it applies to good being a good husband, it applies to being a good father. It's almost some of these principles that we've talked about, leadership, whatever it is, they transcend across the board for everything. And I've noticed that pattern. Have you noticed that too?
Yeah, it's pretty wild actually. Our world isn't that complicated. I mean, yes it is, right? It's very busy, the world we're in, like we're getting pulled a million ways and we have email and Slack and text and you have all these things. But at the core, if you look at human beings, people are driven for two things: to seek pleasure or to avoid pain. And it's pretty much that's about it. And so when you can actually understand that John is avoiding this conversation that he should be having because he wants to avoid pain, now I can find a way to say, hey, John, I realize the conversation that you really probably don't want to have is X. This is going to be the easiest conversation ever because I'm open to hearing what your feedback is. Can we go ahead and have that conversation? And it's amazing when you teach people these tools, they're like, wait, I can do this, like you said, at home with my child, in the job, just by stating, hey, this is what's really going on. Here's the elephant in the room. You hear people say that and then say, look, there's no judgment on it. This is not coming from a place of ego, but rather from love. What's really going on? And when people then put the guard goes down, it's like, all right, now we can get to what are you trying to avoid? The pain? Are you seeking pleasure? And then I can help you find that way. So it's just, we are actually pretty simple because we're all human beings and we all want to connect with someone else.
Yeah, I love that. Along those same lines with vulnerability, connecting, you have this concept called, win from within. Can you tie that into this?
Yeah. So you were talking about performing. One of the most important things that we need to do every single day is to take care of ourselves so that we can show up as the best version of being a trial attorney or being a brother or being a dad or whatever hat you're wearing. But here's the challenge. We weren't taught this stuff. My mom and most moms, I'm just going to say they didn't teach us to take care of themselves first. What they taught us was, I'm going to go ahead and take care of the house, the kids, the dog, everything around us before I take care of me. And the challenge with that is if you're trying to pour from an empty cup, it just doesn't work. And so what I teach to win from within is, how can we make sure to pour into you on a daily basis so that you can actually go out there and show up as your best version of yourself? So for myself, like I have an extensive, morning routine, but there's only 4 non-negotiables. And it's pretty simple. It's like, we're going to do breath work, we're going to do meditation, yoga, and qigong. And that's 40 minutes long. Once that's done, I'm ready to take on the world. You can tell me the world's falling apart and I'm ready to deal with it because I poured into me. But often, Harry, when I ask people, hey, what'd you do for yourself this morning? Their answer is like, well, I got up, I brushed my teeth, looked at my cell phone, had a cup of coffee and went to work. And it's like, dude, that's how you prepared to go take the day on? That's going to be a tough one, man, because you haven't actually given yourself some time to pour into your mind, your body, and your soul. So I try to simplify it as best I can which is, look, just every single day, take care of your mind, your body, and your soul. If you do that, you're going to have a much better chance to win from within, which is going to help your company, which is going to help your family, than if you just wake up haphazardly, have a cup of coffee and go to work.
Yeah. I mean, taking care of yourself, you just feel better. You can operate better. You can operate at different frequencies. You can operate longer. I mean, it's fundamental work, like we talked about before. Now, the win from within and the self framework, do those go hand in hand in the book?
So they actually came after the book, but if you look at it, if you really to dive in, you'd be like, I had evolutions of things. So the win from within is pretty basic. It's called ABC, which is align, believe, and choose. And literally, whether you're a company or a person or a team, I take people through the exact same framework. We make sure we get aligned with who we are, right? Then we work on the beliefs or the mindset, and then we choose how we're going to show up every single day. The self part of things is a little bit more, I don't know, thorough. There's a little bit more details to it, but it really breaks down to your strength, energy, love, and freedom. And what I've found is there's 3 areas of all. There's emotional, physical, and mental. And so the whole idea is, how are you checking in on, let's just take your strengths, like emotional strength. How are you checking in on those things? Do you have a process? And I give different exercises for each area because there's 12 total areas to check in on. So that one's a little harder to describe over a podcast. But the
Yeah,
basic idea is look, strength, energy, love, and freedom. Are we checking in on these areas every single day? And if not, maybe we can just evaluate where maybe my energy is a little low mentally. How are we going to boost that up a little bit so I can show up as the best as my best version. So I have different frameworks that get applied, but to answer your question, really the basics are you taking care of yourself on a daily basis? That's the starter pack is like let's 15 minutes a day, let's just pour into you and then we'll get into more advanced stuff like the ABCs and the self.
I love that. Did you use this in your own entrepreneurial journey to scale to get yourself out of the kind of daily operations to position yourself to a point where you can exit those companies?
Yeah, and again, I'll go back to when my wife and I were separated. That was the one or two worst times of my life, right? There was losing my dad, and then there was going through this separation. And at the time, from the outside looking in, people would have said, "Oh, things look great." I was making 7-figure plus a year. The company looked like it was doing great, but I was almost 300 pounds. My wife and I are separated. I'm not happy. And so the first basic thing that I did, Harry, is I really got back to just taking care of me. That was like step one is I'm going to wake up early. I used to wake up really early, like 4:45, and I would hit the gym. And that was like the first thing I would do.
Yeah.
And all it did is it started the domino effect. Like once I started working out, now I started eating better. Once I started eating better, now I'm feeling better. Now I'm feeling better. Now mentally, I'm at a much higher rate. But it all started with literally getting up and working out. And somewhere along the line, I had lost that because I was an athlete in college, working out early in 2 days and 3 days. That wasn't uncommon. But then I got in the professional world and it was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not doing those things. And all these other things compounded to, I really kind of lost myself. And step one was literally, all right, let's go to the gym. And once you do that, like I said, then the dominoes start to fall. Everything else starts to fall into place. So it actually is pretty simple. If you look at it as like, what's really going on? Where can I start? And oftentimes it's, being present, start a meditation practice, do a little journaling. That's going to be the entry point to you taking off and everything else. So I try to break it down to as easy as possible. Like for me, it was just working out. For some people, it's, I don't know, renewing their faith, reading the Bible every day. Whatever your thing is, it doesn't matter. Let's start small and then it's going to progress to you really finding your groove again and living your best life.
I love that. Everybody needs a routine, and that's a big part of keeping you kind of stable, balanced. I practice jujitsu, and I tell my wife all the time I spent doing this sport is an investment into us because it keeps you grounded, keeps the ego in check, gives you that sense of different community that you're involved with as well. So it's a fun reset and a fun way to get in touch really with yourself too. It helps bring to light the frame of mind that you might be in that specific day, or things that may have been accumulating over time. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to ask you, well, just go ahead. Do you do that more for the physical or the mental side of things?
Both. I mean,
Yeah.
it has that. I mean, jujitsu, my exercise routine, it's a mix of both. So it's given me the opportunity and the space to just kind of be alone with myself and to have, the time to process the thoughts, the time process to what's the real issue here, problems that, reach where I am now. Because, when you're running an organization, the typical news you deal with isn't the everything smells like delicious roses. It's usually the, hey, I can't solve this problem. We have a problem. What do we do? So dealing with that too is also part of the process. Both of those, my exercise routine just gives me the space to deal with all of it and to be really reset. And when things are thrown at you, you're like, all right, what's next? Deal with it. Deal with the problem as they come up with a solution, delegate when you can, and move on to the next one.
Isn't that interesting? So you have this major challenge, and instead of sitting there on this problem and just thinking about it, if you actually just step away, go do jujitsu it's amazing how, wait a minute, I have clarity on how to solve this problem all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's some great advice is literally go out and take a walk, go do jujitsu, hit the heavy bag, hop on a phone call with somebody that makes you feel better, take a shower, like just pattern interrupt whatever's happening. And then you're actually going to find clarity to the problem versus sitting there beating yourself up about, oh my gosh, how do I solve that? So it's a brilliant tool that you're employing every day, it sounds like.
I mean, and you deal with this when you try a lot of cases. When you're trying cases, when you first, at least when I first started, all you're doing is just reading what's in this case. What can I do more? Am I doing enough? Is it enough? Am I enough? Like, you're dealing with all of those issues, right? And when you're going through that, what I found is when you employ this routine, break that pattern, like you said, I mean, some of the best ideas that I've had for trying cases, some of the best outcomes I've had for cases have come to me after that moment of clarity, after jujitsu, after exercise, when your heart rate is coming down and you have the ability to just kind of reformulate those thoughts and something pops into your head and you're paying attention, some of those develop into the best nuggets I've found. And so, yes, invaluable part of the process.
Yeah, I love that you have that tool, brother. I'm glad that you found, I call them tools or triggers or anything that's going to help you, as you said, reset. It's a great point. Is like, maybe I'm not operating at my best right now. I'm going to go pattern interrupt, go reset, come back. It's like, oh my gosh, how didn't I see it? It was right there, but I couldn't see it in the moment.
So let me ask you this. The law is especially this kind of litigation work, trial work, the nature of it is adversarial. So you're dealing with the other side who wants you to lose, who's doing everything they can to make you lose. How do you, or what advice would you have to somebody trying to scale up a team to fit in this winning culture in a system where the other side doesn't want you to win?
Yeah. One of the most important things you can do, and it's literally why I meditate every single day, is I want to respond. I don't want to react. And I have to imagine in your line of work, especially, he or she that keeps their calm almost every time is going to be the one that's going to come out successful. So for instance, if there's an objection, and again, I'm not an attorney, guys, but I'm just, if there's an objection and if I get really like, no, judge, and I don't know the exact verbiage, but objection again, I'm guessing the jury kind of looks like, oh, he's lost his cool here. Instead, it's like, no, I understand. Not a problem, judge. And we move forward. I imagine that's something that you've learned through the day. It's the same thing in a team. Like, I want to make sure that if something bad happens or I need to have a crucial conversation, I'm not going to do that publicly. I'm going to do that behind closed doors in a very respectful manner. It's also giving me time to really get my thoughts put together. And there's certain things that you can do in order to do that, right? Like there's breath work that you can do so you show up as the best version of you. Because what happens when we have an objection or in sales or in a courtroom is your heart rate spikes and you want to say a bunch of things really fast because that's our visceral reaction. It's probably the last thing you want to do. What you want to do is collect your thoughts, breathe, pause for a moment, and then respond with whatever that next thing is going to be. And so that's something that, because look, as you said, it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows, whether it's in business or in a courtroom, things that probably aren't the best, adversaries coming at you. They're probably going to say things that are going to really get your heart rate spiked. But that person that's able to just handle it with control, thoughtful, now it's amazing how everybody on the team's like, well, this guy's a leader, or this gal can really handle herself. So it's just one of those things that we don't talk about. Again, we weren't taught this stuff at school. And oftentimes, in relationships, if you and your spouse are having an argument, he or she who yells, they usually say something really hurtful, and then they're the ones that have to end up apologizing. You never want to be that. If you can, take a breath. Say, you know what? I need a recess. I need to take a time out. I need to go ahead and collect my thoughts because what I'm about to say wouldn't be that good. And so I think giving ourselves permission on a team to say, look, we're going to encounter some really negative things along the way. But here's the deal. I want to present this case, or I want to present to my team in the best possible manner. And in order to do that, I'm going to give myself permission to take a moment, to respond and not react. And so that's a lot of the training that I do with whether they're salespeople or executive teams. Don't say that thing that you can't take back. Take a moment and just pause. And especially when you have an adversary or somebody coming at you, it's same in a football game or whatever. That person that's able to stay present and calm and collected, they always end up coming out on top versus the hothead that lost their temper. That usually doesn't go very well.
Yeah. And a funny story along those lines, when you're selecting a jury, when you're selecting 12 jurors to listen to your case, you have to tell them about what your case is about. And then you just have to ask them to be like, please, you be honest about how you feel about these cases. Because no matter how good of a lawyer you are, no matter what you try to say to folks, if they come in already with a frame of mind or some life experiences that colors them away from a specific view, no matter how good the evidence is, you're never going to convince those people. no matter what. Like I'm sure in sales you get the same thing. If somebody doesn't have a problem that you're going to solve with a product, there's nothing you can do, no discounts you can give, no wooey sales stuff you can do to win them over. Same for trying cases, same for jury selection. So when you're talking to these jurors, you have to ask them to tell you about how they feel about these cases. And a lot of times it's negative stuff. I don't like these lawyers that do this. I think lawyers are shady. Whatever it might be, you're getting rejection, 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 and objection over and over again. And so one particular case I remember, there was a group of about 80 potential jurors. We were talking, everyone's giving me the bad stuff. Thank you for sharing. And there was a break. Pacing around the hallways during a break, talking to my co-counsels. And one of the jurors in the back, they can't talk to us. So I can't talk to them. But they come and sit right next to me and turns to me and says, you should write a book about how to stay calm. And I just start cracking up because, again, when people are giving you this rejection in a room full of 80 people, all eyes on you, and they're telling you how much they think people like you suck, you just have to sit there and take it and say, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for telling me that, because it's, that's what you want. That's what you need from them. But on the flip side, you can't react. You can't have that visceral reaction. You can't say that hurts my feelings. You can tell them that it hurts your feelings, but whatever the case may be, you can't react to it in a hot-headed manner or what that visceral reaction may be. So funny story.
Oh, dude, I love that because those two words, thank you, it's pure gold anytime you receive feedback, whether it's good or bad. This is so funny that you say this, Harry, because oftentimes people maybe they were taught to be really modest. Okay. This is something, and I'm speaking personal experience, where, somebody gives you a compliment and you deflect it. You're like, oh no, your hair looks really good. No, no, don't, it doesn't. And you actually discount what they're saying. What you said is so brilliant. Thank you. No matter what the feedback is, good, bad, indifferent. Thank you for sharing. And that's it, because it's their opinion. You can't change it. And that's what you're saying. Like, some people are just going to be adversarial, that all lawyers are just terrible. Thank you for your opinion. I appreciate that. And you move forward. It's so remarkable, brother, because it totally disarms them as well, because they're ready for the fight.
Yeah,
you're like,
come in there.
yeah, I'm not going to do that, man. Thank you. I appreciate your opinion. Moving on.
Yeah. So wild tool. And it's funny how, again, some of these things you learn in the craft or different places in life, it applies everywhere. So I love seeing that too when I talk to folks like you. So tell me more about the podcast and what kind of, what's the goal behind that?
Yeah, very similar to the entire goal of Let's Go Win, is to inspire people to live their best lives. So we have people athletes and executives and entrepreneurs, and, I have had some really cool breathwork people and biohackers. The whole idea is I want to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly of the story, right? I don't want to just highlight everything that's great, because that's not the way the world works and people don't really relate. I want to talk about when you were at your worst, what happened? How did you get out of it? When you were at your best, what did that look like? And so the whole idea is I just want people to share their cool experiences, to say, you know what, this is my experience, just like you're doing today. Like, hey, this is what I do as a trial attorney. I've only seen stuff on TV. I'm sure it's not the same, right? So I can learn from you to be like, oh, that's how it really works. And so that's the same idea on my show. I want to really have people come on, be authentic, right? That is the most important thing I tell my guests. I'm like, look, guys, don't put on the show. Don't put on the PR responses. Just be a human being and share. Yeah. Share the good, share the bad, share the ugly. And what comes from it typically is you meet some really cool people that have done some amazing things, and they've gone through the same challenges that you did. And I think that's what my audience typically says to me. They're like, look, thank you for just sharing how you went through this challenge, or, you lost, this game or this company, you lost this money. Thank you, because I'm going through that, and I thought I was the only one. So the whole idea is just share and let people relate so they can get a little better themselves.
Yeah. And look, I think in every industry, there's times where you're going to have peak lows, peak highs, and everything in between. At least from my perspective, from what I've seen, leading a group of people, going through that rank of leadership, or going through just developing as a leader myself. I mean, how you handle all of those, in grace really defines on how your people will react to you too. In the worst times and the best times, if people can come to you as a sense of reason or a sounding board, I think that's a pretty big compliment you can get as a leader.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing is, I say this often, it's never as bad as you think it is. And conversely, it's probably never as good as you think it is either. And that kind of allows you to have a little perspective to be like, look, of course, ride the momentum. I'm all for that. But just know that when the negativity comes, don't be shocked. Like, it's probably not as bad as you think it is. In our heads, oh my gosh, dude. In our heads, we're like, this is the world's ending. And we kind of act like 16-year-old kids that we lost our first love. It's like, it's the hardest thing in the world. A year later, you're like, what was her name again? That's what's kind of funny is it's like, that's how we do these things. It's the biggest thing in the moment. And then a couple months later, you're like, what the heck was I even talking about? And so that's what I try to always apply with my teams. It's like, look, it's not as bad as you think it is. And it's probably not as good. And that's cool. What are we going to focus on? The good or the bad?
Well, J.M. Ryerson, thank you so much for this conversation. Can you tell our viewers how they can find out more information about you, where they can find your book, how they can follow you on the podcast?
Yeah, thank you, Harry. I appreciate it. So if you look up Let's Go Win, you're going to find me. So letsgowin.com. Everything's there. You want to buy any of the 3 books, it's on Amazon. They're all different, but I think you'll get a lot from it. And then ultimately, Let's Go Win podcast, which I've been doing for 6 years now. Oh my gosh, it's flown by.
Nice.
But Harry, man, I appreciate you. This was awesome. You asked great questions. And just thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on the show.
Thank you, Jam. I appreciate it. A pleasure speaking to you, and I look forward to speaking to you more.